The Lazarus Sign, spontaneous arm movements after death. The Lazarus Sign is a rare postmortem reflex where a deceased person's arms rise, bend at the elbows, and fold over the chest in what looks like a disturbing gesture of prayer. Even after brain death, certain parts of the nervous system remain active, specifically the spinal cord. When the brain is no longer sending signals, the spine may still fire off electrical impulses. This activity, though uncoordinated, can produce a reflex arc. In the case of the Lazarus Sign, the arc affects the muscles in the arms and the shoulders, resulting in a slow, deliberate-looking movement. This phenomenon occurs most in the intensive care units after ventilators have been removed. The body muscles are no longer paralyzed by drugs, and electrical impulses in the spine are free to travel and do what they want. The result can be a sudden arm movement, often symmetrical, and a complete folding of the hands over the chest, as if the body were performing one final ritual of its own. The name Lazarus Sign comes from Lazarus of Bethany, a biblical figure resurrected by Jesus after 4 days in the tomb. The visual of a seemingly lifeless body suddenly rising or moving has obvious parallels. But in the modern medicine days, the Lazarus Sign is not a sign of life returning, it's actually just the opposite. It's a confirmation of how little we understand about death's timeline. One ICU nurse recalled watching a brain-dead patient raise both arms into a perfect prayer pose nearly 2 minutes after life support was removed. She said, "I knew what it was, but I still stepped back like I was watching someone wake up." Agonal breathing, the last reflex of a dying brain. Agonal breathing is a disturbing respiratory reflex that can occur seconds to minutes before or even after clinical death. It sounds like gasping, harsh, irregular inhalations that seem labored, desperate, and unmistakably alive. The phenomenon originates in the brainstem, specifically the medulla oblongata, the most primitive part of the human brain. After higher brain functions cease, and sometimes after the heart has already stopped, this part of the brain may still function for a short amount of time. It can send involuntary signals to the diaphragm, triggering spasmodic breaths. These aren't real breaths. There's no oxygen being absorbed, no consciousness behind them. It's just the body firing off its final electrical commands. The sound is wet, rattling, and often compared to a reverse snore or a death rattle amplified. It may occur only once, or it may continue for several minutes with agonizing gaps in between. Witnesses describe it as being the most horrifying sound they've ever heard. It can resemble choking, struggling, a dying plea almost. A hospice nurse once described a patient who had been unresponsive for 10 minutes suddenly letting out a gasping breath so sharp and deep it made the patient's daughter scream and run out of the room, which is totally understandable. She's struggling. Postmodern vocalization, groaning, moaning, and sighing from the dead. Postmortem vocalization refers to the sound a body can produce after death, most often moans, groans, sighs, or even strange gurgles. These are not signs of life returning, but rather the unsettling side effects of decomposition. Shortly after death, the body doesn't go silent. Bacteria in the digestive system begin breaking down tissues almost immediately. This process generates gases, which build up inside the torso, especially the gastrointestinal tract. The pressure created in this internal fermentation has to go somewhere. When a corpse is moved, lifted, turned, or manipulated in any way, this trapped gas can be forced up through the trachea and across the vocal cords. If the larynx is intact, the escaping air can vibrate the folds just enough to make a noise. The result? A sound no one expects to hear from the dead. It is different than agonal breathing because agonal breathing happens while the person is still technically alive or had just passed away. It's a last reflex of the brainstem, and it involves muscular contractions in the chest. Postmortem vocalization happens after death, sometimes hours, with no active movement, just only the gas release. A mortuary assistant recounted shifting a body onto a gurney when it let out a low, groaning exhale. He said, "It sounded like someone who had just woken up from a nightmare. I nearly dropped the body." Postmortem priapism and coffin birth, unsettling reactions in the dead bodies. Two of the most disturbing postmortem phenomena involve postmortem priapism, an erection in male corpses, and coffin birth, the expulsion of a fetus from a dead pregnant woman as her body decomposes. Postmortem priapism often occurs in cases involving spinal trauma or hanging. After death, the body systems shut down, but gravity still does its job. With circulation gone and muscles relaxing, blood settles into the lower body. The penis, a vascular organ, fills with blood passively, resulting in a lifeless, stiff erection. Coffin birth, or postmortem fetal extrusion, is driven by internal pressure. As bacteria breaks down in the tissue in the abdomen, gases expand. If a woman was in the later stages of pregnancy, that gas can build enough force to push the fetus out of the birth canal. It's gruesome and unintentional. Sometimes a pregnancy isn't even known until this happens. An early stage pregnancy or cases of larger individuals, a fetus might not be externally visible or noted in a rush examination. By the time the body is buried or stored, no one may have realized that another life was inside. One pathologist opened a sealed coffin to investigate a leak. Inside, he found the expected remains and beneath the pelvic area, a smaller curled remains of a second body. No one knew she was pregnant, not until then. Postmortem muscle contractions, reflex movements in corpses. Even after death, a body can move. These movements are called postmortem muscle contractions, and they can range from small twitches to sudden full limb jerks. In rare cases, corpses have been observed sitting partially upright. When a person dies, the heart stops and brain activity ceases, but the cells in the body don't immediately shut down. For a short time, muscle cells still contain adenosine triphosphate, the energy that fuels contractions. Combined with calcium flooding the muscle fibers and the slow decay of motor neurons, the residual energy can trigger reflex movements. If the spinal cord is still intact, even without input from the brain, it can still continue to send signals. The result? Arms flexing, fingers curling. In rare unsettling cases, the torso bends enough to sit up. One funeral director in Ohio said that while prepping a body, the man's leg suddenly jerked so hard it knocked over a metal stand. "It was like he was trying to kick me away," he said, and for a second I thought he did. Skin slippage, the outer layers peeling away. Skin slippage is a stage of decomposition in which the top layer of a person's skin detaches from the tissues beneath it. After death, the protein bonds that hold skin layers together begin to break down. Moisture, bacteria, and enzymes contribute to the deterioration, particularly in warm and humid environments. The epidermis becomes waterlogged and unstable, sliding off the body like loose clothing. Hands, feet, and the face are the first areas to be affected. Entire sheets of skin can completely detach. Morgue staff refer to the complete peeling of the hands as degloving. On the face, it can completely alter a person's appearance. As the skin shrinks and pulls back, nails and stubble appear longer. This has led to the enduring myth that hair and nails continue to grow after death. They don't, it just looks that way. A mortician recalled lifting a hand to place it in a prayer pose and having the skin slide right off. It came off like a glove. I wasn't even surprised, just horrified, he said. Autopsy triggered vocalization, screaming from the slab. Autopsy-triggered vocalization refers to the sudden, often terrifying sound a corpse can make when incisions are made during a medical examination. As bacteria break down soft tissues, they release gases that can cause bloating and pressure, especially in the abdomen and chest. When a scalpel slices into one of these gas pockets, the trapped air escapes. If it passes through the vocal cords, it can create a sound. The result might be a groan, a sigh, or in some rare cases, a scream. This is different from postmortem vocalization because postmortem vocalization happens when the body is moved and gas escapes passively. Autopsy-triggered vocalization is active. The release is sudden and forceful, caused by a direct incision. It's often louder and way more abrupt, which leads it to be 10 times more scary. A forensic pathologist described making an incision when a body let out a sound like a dying animal. She paused, scalpel in hand, and said, "For a moment, I thought the dead woman was about to speak." Postmortem bleeding, when the dead still leak. Postmortem bleeding refers to the release of blood or blood-like fluids from a corpse, sometimes hours or even days after death. After death, blood settles due to gravity, livor mortis. Early on, it remains fluid. If the body is moved or cut during this period, it can still spill. As decomposition progresses, liquefied tissues and internal fluids can leak unexpectedly, often through the mouth, eyes, or wounds. In medieval Europe, corpses found with blood on their lips were accused of being vampires. In religious folklore, unexplained bleeding was viewed as a sign of divine punishment or unrest. A cemetery worker recounted opening a casket during a relocation to find dried blood stains on the face and clothing of a person. They said that she had died peacefully, but looking at her, it didn't seem so peaceful. Taphophobia and the safety coffins, the fear of being buried alive. Taphophobia is the fear of being buried alive. In past centuries, it wasn't irrational, it was a documented risk. Before modern tools, diagnosing death was unreliable. Conditions like epilepsy, catalepsy, and diabetic comas mimicked death. There are verified reports of coffins found clawed from the inside, with broken nails and twisted limbs. In response, people invented coffins with bells, flags, or even breathing tubes. Some had strings tied to the hands so the buried person can ring for help. Few were ever triggered. Most who woke up underground were never heard. A gravedigger in 1890s London claimed to have opened a coffin to find scratch marks etched into the lid and bite wounds on the tongue. The face was frozen in a scream, he said.